So we are here with the SU-27SM, guys, and why am I talking about this aircraft before I even start to talk about the Rafale in the channel? Well, guys, he received a massive buff. All flankers actually got a massive buff, so today we're gonna talk a little bit about it while we fly it and compare to the older SU-27 from before the update, okay? So let's start. So one of the main changes was the actual, we're going to talk about the engine, but the first one was introduced to all flankers, and it is basically the energy retention together with the elevator basically pull, right? So the aircraft now has overall less induced drag while turning in certain speeds and specific situations, but overall it will decrease the loss of energy while turning, meaning that the aircraft will be able to maintain the energy, as you see, in a much better situation while it's actually pulling AOA, pulling Gs, and basically turning, okay? Together with that, it actually, in certain situations, it can be able to pull 20% more with the elevator, meaning that it can actually turn a lot more depending on situation. You can feel that with the amount of Gs that we are pulling over here. If you tested before, you would notice that the aircraft would pull a lot less. So overall, it means that the aircraft is able to turn more and also maintain more energy overall because of the lower drag, right? You can see that it can pull a lot of Gs, it can pull a lot of AOA. Of course, eventually it will lose a lot of energy because it's still an aircraft that it's quite big, it has a lot of drag anyway, right? But yeah, still it can maintain a very good turn, even a better turn basically compared to before, with less drag, more energy retention, and more pull because of the elevator. These are the main changes, and together with that, the engines now have more power. We have now the engine from the SU-34, right? So you can even see that it has the bluish kind of color with the new AL-31, right? This is the FM1. Remember, this version actually you know, it's a version that was introduced to the SU-27SM in the later stages of development. To be honest, this became a very modern SU-27SM. Now, the only differences between the SM2 and SM3 would mean that the cockpit is a better one in the SM3, and with the SM2 upgrade, you would receive the Irbis radar, which is a much better radar, and a PESA radar, right? So this would mean that this aircraft is basically what the SU-27SM3 would be like, but with a worse radar and a worse cockpit, basically. That's the main thing, okay? So a very modern aircraft. So it is turning more. You can see that it's turning more. Better energy retention, it can pull more, everything is better on the SU-27. So let's test it out now, the actual engine and what that brings to acceleration, to thrust weight, and all the normal tests that we do, okay? So when talking about the engines, we gotta talk about the weight of the aircraft as well, to compare it to the old SU-27 and have a thrust to weight comparison as well. And then after that, we are gonna talk about the acceleration times, how much time it takes to accelerate to certain conditions. So the first test, we measured the weight with minimum fuel, no loadouts, with the old and the new SU-27, and they are pretty much the same, around 19 tons, 0.8. Okay, so it means that the weight of the aircraft, even with the update, didn't change. Even though it has a new engine, the weight is pretty much the same, okay? On the thrust side of things is where it starts to turn, with the static power of the old SU-27 being 232 kilonewtons, and the new one is around 248. So we can already see a pretty significant increase in thrust over here. Of course, it's a small percentage. It's like 5% or something, 6%, but still it is substantial enough so that you can actually improve the acceleration times, as you're gonna see later. And in the optimal condition side of things, this is when you are putting the most amount of air inside the engine for it to ingest and produce power. It is in the old 304 kilonewtons and now 324, producing 20 kilonewtons more, 10 in each engine, which is, like I said, close to 10% more, but not quite. And it feels like it's nothing, but as you're gonna see, it makes it up for being quite a substantial change. In the thrust to weight, if you compare the weight that we had before and now with the power that we have before and now, you will see that the old SU-27 had a 1.55 in optimal conditions thrust to weight in these situations, and now it has a 1.65, which means that you have a 0.1 increase in that, and meaning that now it has a better thrust weight than the F-16C in the same situations, and around almost the same as the J-10, being worse than the Rafale, the Eurofighter, and the F-15E, being way better than the Gripen as well. So it means that the SU-27 is one of the best thrust to weight of the game now, becoming, one of the best out there, you know, together with something like the J-10, with the F-16C being better than the F-16. So it's a very, very interesting thrust to weight. It's a small change that makes it up to be pretty, you know, okay change for the aircraft itself. On the acceleration times is where you can really see the difference. We did this from 3 tests. So the first one from 0 kilometers per hour at the runway, 0 throttle, and we start the timer, clicking, you know, to accelerate, and then we stop the timer at Mach 1 after takeoff, right? In the old SU-27 was 38 seconds, now it's 36, so a 2-second advantage. Compared to the other aircraft, for example, the F-16C is 35, so it's much closer than the F-16C. 44 from the Gripen, much better, and the J-10 for 36, or 42 for the Gripen, sorry, and the 36 for the J-10. It means that it has a general idea of being in the same realms of the F-16C and J-10, which are way lighter aircraft than the SU-27, right? It's still worse than the F-15E with 30 seconds, and of course worse than the Eurofighter and the Rafale with 32 and 33 respectively, right? So for the Mach 1 to 1.5, this was measured at 5 kilometers altitude. It went from the old one 52 seconds to now 43.5 seconds. So it means we have around 8.5 seconds less to accelerate from Mach 1 to Mach 1.5, and a very substantial increase here in acceleration. You know, if you compare to some of the other aircraft, for example, the F-16C does it in 35 seconds. So even though it has a worse thrust weight, it is still lower drag because it's a smaller aircraft and stuff, and it means that it can accelerate way better. But at least now it's better than the Gripen. It was way worse than the Gripen before, which is an awful aircraft on the terms of thrust weight, right? So it means that it's way better than what it was, and now it's even better than the J-10, being still way worse than the Eurofighter and the F-15E, right? And then in the Mach 1.5 to Mach 2 acceleration time, this was made at 10 kilometers altitude. It went from 1 minute and 10 seconds from before the update to 54.8 seconds, so way better as well. The F-16C, for example, does it in 1 minute and 50 seconds, so way better than that. The Gripen, I mean, 2 minutes plus, and it barely gets to the Mach 1.97, 1 minute 7 for the J-10, so it's way better than this aircraft, but it's still worse than the 14.0. So it means that the SU-27 in acceleration terms is probably one of the best. I would have to compare to the F-15C as well, but it's one of the best aircraft in acceleration after the 14.0s. So really putting the Su-27 now for being one of the most competitive 13.7s in the terms of performance, pure performance. Still, it doesn't have the most modern radar, which is something that a lot of people complain about. The missiles are still problematic, although some of the missiles, they got a severe increase in performance, like the R-73 apparently. So I'm gonna test it out to see if it actually is true or not. But overall, guys, the SU-27SM was already a pretty good aircraft, but it was sometimes a hard one to fly. Now it is the best Soviet aircraft, Russian aircraft that we have in the game, and it just becomes one of the best in the game. So it's a very, very good aircraft in terms of acceleration, in terms of maintaining energy in the turn, on pulling Gs, everything with that. The Su-27SM is a pretty good aircraft now. So an incredible buff that is small here and there that adds up to be a very, very good aircraft at the end of the day. Okay, guys, so this is it for the buff of the Su-27SM. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, leave a like. See you guys on the next one. Bye.